this, we're in week 8, which is kind of really extraordinary. Extraordinary because of the amount of time that's gone by, but also just how wonderful that we've, been meeting every week for 8 weeks. I mean, there's a big discussion really at some point about what, what we want really from these meetings as we go on. But maybe that's a question that we can ask in another session. But to have a little think in your heads really about what is the best use of this incredible connection and sense of community that we've been able to create, and with new people coming all of the time. I'll just plant that as a little seed. So this week we have Matthew Jewsbury, who's give us a wave, Matthew.
Hi.
And we've got Anne Odeke. Give us a wave, Anne. And so Anne's been as a viewer to a couple of these.
Yeah,
haven't you?
Okay.
And Anne is currently in Stratford-upon-Avon, aren't you? Because you were at the RSC.
Yeah,
you are at the RSC. You're still at the RSC, but obviously everything's closed. And Matthew's furloughed as well.
I am.
Oh, what a strange world!
It is strange.
I'm in my bedroom. I've been kicked out of the front room. And I just thought it'd be really great to do, because we got Matthew and I know each other from the Watermill.
Yeah.
So you used to work at the Watermill, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
And you cast a couple of shows that I worked on. And then when I came to the Queen's, I said, would you come and help us out? And we have a kind of unusual arrangement, don't we? Is that you give us lots of lists and then kind of detailed knowledge. So we're doing this project, I have a chat with you about it, you send over loads of recommendations and loads of lists, and then if we really get into something particular, or if we really need to harangue an agent, sometimes you charm the agent for us.
I try.
And that works really, really successfully. I suppose, and we'll get into that, what the role of the casting director is, but, I'm not the best person at remembering names. I've got all these lists now, and part of my process is I go through all my lists first, and a lot of that is one of the lists, we have a list which is local actors, and that's the list. I always go to that list first, and when we're casting in a kind of project, but I do always need some support, and Matthew rather brilliantly obviously knows loads of actors, and I'll ask you a little bit more about that, how you get to know who's about. And then Anne, we met through Outer Limits, and you did the brilliant first outing of Stiletto Beat, which was absolutely joyous. And then I keep trying to get her in the casting room, but Anne's always really busy. And then obviously Anne's been rocking up on this, and I thought, being both of you, it would just be really great to have also, because the perspective from an actor as well, and the two of you know each other, which is really, really great. And I really want everybody to, I think the strange thing about casting is it can always feel a bit of a mystery for everyone. It's a bit sort of shrouded in secrecy. So it'd be really great, there is no stupid question about the kind, and obviously it's from Matthew's perspective and Anne's perspective and mine, and obviously that would change, depending on who we were talking to. But feel free, we'll chat for a little bit. I'll ask Matthew and Anne some questions, and then we'll open it up. But I think often, some of the things I certainly, one thing, just to put it out there, that what from my perspective of the casting session, and of course that's, I'm going to say when you walk into the room, but obviously with that we don't have rooms to walk into at the moment, and casting is really, it's all we're finding new ways to do it, and rather brilliantly we can use digital medium to be able to do things quite successfully. But I suppose what I want for those who are actors, and we will, for those who aren't, we will also be talking about the process. You know, that might be interesting for other people. But certainly from a director's perspective, whenever an actor walks in the room, me, and you know, if it's a team, an MD or a choreographer, is that we're always hoping that you're the right person for the part. And I think that's always important to remember, because I think often, I mean, certainly we all know that that's a kind of shared experiences about interviews, or we're going for a job, is that often we can be quite negative, And a lot of these sessions that we've been having is, particularly around class and imposter syndrome within the industry, that we can often sort of work ourselves out of a job through going, I don't belong here. But certainly for me, when any actor walks in the room, I'm willing that actor to be absolutely the actor that I want to join the company. But Matthew, tell me a little bit about how did you get into casting?
Sure. I mean, it was slightly random in some ways. So I didn't have a drama background at all. I studied history at university. But I just knew I wanted to do something in the arts. I was sort of gearing that towards TV and film when I was growing up. And then I moved home, which is Newbury in Berkshire, and there's a theatre there called the Watermill. And I applied for a job there as an admin secretary, and I didn't get it actually. And the general manager there, Claire Lindsay, said, "There's a job coming up in a few months you might be more suited to." And of course, I sort of forgot about it and went off, and I got a job in a solicitor's office and was just, dawdling along. And then Claire phoned me and said, "This other job we talked about has come up. Would you like to come and meet Hedda Beebe, who was going to be the new artistic director there?" And I sort of jumped at the chance and dashed over in a lunch break from the solicitor's office, and sort of started there about 2 weeks later, and became Hedda's sort of personal assistant. An admin assistant, and within that job there was setting up auditions and availability checking actors, and that was the part of the job, I sort of loved it all, but that was the part of the job that I really loved. And so with Hedda's help and guidance, that's the area that I particularly focused on, and so we sort of built that then into my job title, and I got more heavily involved in that. And then, very fortunately, a job came up at the RSC as their casting department administrator, and I just really wanted to focus in on that area of the world. And so was very sad to leave the Watermill, but went to the RSC. And I've been there for the last 9 years, sort of slowly working my way up and getting to know how the industry works. But it was never really a clear career path. It was never something I sort of imagined I would do, and actually I didn't really know that was a job I could have done when I was coming out of university and even starting in theatre, but I got the bug for it, and I sort of loved it ever since.
And you tell us about, there's a bit of feedback, isn't there? I don't know who that is. Will you tell us about your story and how you ended up being a performer?
Yes, so basically, I've been doing it, I've been acting professionally for the last, now it would be 7 years. And before that, I was a drama teacher for about 5.5 years in the South End area. So, yeah, and just like secondary school, sixth form, and that's what I did. And basically, it sounds a bit weird, but I made the jump to leave teaching and to do an MA in Mountview, partially because actually it was my boyfriend who persuaded me. We met doing Amdram, and he was like, "You love it, you absolutely love it, why don't you try it?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." But I'd also been saving up to go travelling, and I was like, "Do you know what? Look, if I do it, I do it, which would be wonderful. But if I don't, then I'm just gonna fuck off around the world. So it's a win-win. What I now realise is actually kind of me going around the world and all that. I kind of was looking for myself, really, and basically I found that in what I do, and I now realise that, you know, of the two things, because then I got into Mount View to do the MA in acting, and I was like, okay, do I go travelling or do I act? And I came to the conclusion, and the right conclusion, I believe, that the acting is what allowed me to, I don't regret it, and I love it and love what I do. So I came at it from a different perspective, and also I came at it from at the age of 26.
Mm-hmm.
So I came at it later as well in life.
And was the MA, was that a 1-year course or a 2-year course?
Yeah, it was. That was a 1-year course.
A 1-year course. Yeah, great. And so I know that often people are asking about good MAs. Yeah. And I'm not, and it's a good one, is it? Okay, great. And what's the process of, so Matthew, and then I'm going to ask you, Anne, as well. What is the process of casting for you, Matthew?
So
what happens?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with a director giving you a play to read, and so that's my first port of call, and reading that play and reading it sort of as a viewer, or you know, as an imagined audience member, and just reading it and being inspired by the words, and then starting to think about who might be good for those parts. A lot of the job starts with a conversation with the director of the production, and their vision for the production, because our main job is to help realize the vision of the director. So we'll try and get a sense of the director's taste and the actors that they like to work with, and then what they want to achieve in the production that they're doing. And then we'll start doing a sort of character breakdown of kind of really sort of straightforward things like ages and types of person, and we might then put that out on Spotlight to a relatively wide group of people. And while so we'll get submissions from that, and then we'll also work from my ideas and a director's ideas to start formulating a list. Then you start availability checking those people, and then start meeting people. So the job is kind of, there's almost two sections to it. There's kind of the personal work, which happens sort of 24/7 for me, which is going to the theatre, watching television, watching film, listening to radio, just researching and getting to know about as many actors as possible. That sort of happens all the time. And there's the specific project-led work when a production is required to be cast.
And at that process with the agent, do they always tell the actor about the project? That's a leading question.
Yeah, I don't think they all do, if I'm honest. I think it depends on the conversation that you have with them, the strength of your availability check in a way. But as soon as you show interest, then yeah, absolutely. So I guess at the start of a process, you might be thinking about the lead role and the lead characters, and at that point, you might be thinking about certainly, depending on what you're doing, anyone with profile or something like that, you might be thinking you'd like to just gauge an opinion. You might like to just see, you know, what are they doing? Are they around? Would they be interested in theatre at the moment? Would they be interested in theatre in this place at the moment? And so, yeah, you hope that information gets to them. I don't think it always does, but I think depending on the type of thing it is, I hope it does.
And then that process of coming into the room,
yeah,
and then the decision making, because I think quite often people are going, you know, mates of mine are going, oh, I haven't heard anything that's really bad. I'm sure they would have made a decision straight away.
Yeah.
It really does vary, the decision making, the time it takes to make that decision, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on in the background?
Well, it can be a whole host of different things. it can be, I think, and you might have an opinion on this particularly, but I think in the casting process, sometimes directors are really exploring how they want to make the show. And so they use it in that way to be inspired by what actors bring to the room. And so actually decision making can be quite a drawn out process, because it's really testing ideas and working out how you can get an ensemble of actors together to fulfill those ideas. Certainly where I work at the RST, our time to get a company together is very long. And so you could be seen on day one and not be offered until the last day of casting, because of the nature of quite big company sizes, cross casting, so that actors are in a number of different plays. That process can take quite a long time. So decisions take a long time to be made. And I think the same can be said for solo productions. Often you might want to make an offer on a particularly important character. If that person doesn't come back to you with an answer for a week, it might affect how you might want to offer other parts out. What I would say is that we endeavour to respond to all actors whether it's a yes or a no, but that process might just take a bit of time.
I do think that's a really important point that you've raised, which is good. That it is, I think, certainly for me, I think for all actors, for you going into the casting process, into the audition process, it probably is the first time that the director is hearing the play, if it is a straight play. And I certainly learned loads about the play during that process. So that is another, that you should feel empowered by that, because that is what you really are offering something into the room. It's not, you're not being tested. Actually, it is really the first time that the words are being spoken out loud, and often you will change the direction of what the project will be, and how a director sees that particular project. And certainly, I'm sure this is so key at the RSC, is that it's, for me, it is about putting a company together that are going to be really strong, and happy, and have a really great time, particularly going on tour, because it can just be really, really hard. And tell us about some of your experiences of the car. What's the best experience? What's the best experience been?
The best experience, you mean as in like in a cast?
In the casting process, yeah.
Casting process. Oh God. I guess.
Do you ever know if it's gone really, really well?
Oh right, yeah. No, sometimes this sounds terrible and really arrogant, but you know that feeling which you get, which is like, I can only describe it in terms of sport, and basically like football or netball. And you know, just as you let the ball go, you know it's gonna go in. Do you know what I mean? And it's a bit like that. And you're like, I know I have just freaking knocked that out the ballpark. So if I do not get that, like, that is on you. That is not on me.
Hey, well, that's so true.
But I don't mean that horribly, and I don't mean that, I know it sounds terribly arrogant, but I think it has to come from a place where you can only do that if you've done all the prep work and all the homework and all of that, you know what I mean? And then you leave knowing that you have done the best that you can do ever, and that, you know, if it goes to someone else, then it must have been the gods or aliens or whatever. But you know when you have nailed it. But at the end of the day, there's also that thing where part of me, of course, your mind plays games with you, where like you ain't heard after a week, and you're like, all right, maybe it wasn't that good. Oh, you haven't heard after 2 weeks, and you're like, you know what? They're very busy people, and then, but then there's several things. Like, obviously, there's a couple of auditions where I've been like, you know what? Actually, that was actually really good. Like, okay, I probably haven't got it, but if I listen to my gut, I know that I wasn't right for it. I know I wasn't. It's just in my mind. It was like, oh man, I loved the play. But just because I loved the play, or just because I loved the director, or I loved the writer, doesn't necessarily mean, and I want it, of course, and of course, who doesn't want to be paid? It's like, you know, I it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right, but to have that the feeling of when you've been in the audition, you've done it, you've left the casting room, and you know that you've knocked it out the ballpark. I mean, to have that feeling, yes, but that decision, the next step is then not in my hands. Do you know what I mean? And that's where you get into that level of, well, it does, you know, it's your eye colour, it's your hair colour, it's your whatever. Do you know what I mean? Then you get into that territory. But that's not to say that, of course, you know, just because you didn't do all of that and all your homework and everything doesn't mean that that's not what the director, you know, the director hasn't seen that, or the casting director hasn't seen that you've worked really hard. Do you know? So yes, you may not be right for that, but of course you might be right for whatever the next project might be further down the line.
Yeah. Will you tell me about your preparation?
Yeah, sure. So I mean,
I'm sure lots of people do it in different ways, but
yeah, definitely. Well, basically, my boyfriend says that I basically prep for auditions like I'm studying for an A-level. And to a certain degree, he is right. Because my slight attitude is, if I don't exhaust myself and stress myself out, then I'm probably not doing it properly. That's ridiculous, and I am aware of that, but that's kind of my thinking. So in terms of my prep, I mean, in its simplicity, I mean, and of course I'm very aware that I'm talking to people that do perform, and so I'm aware that I'm probably telling you things that you already know, but I mean, it's, you get the email through, you get the text, you read the play, you quickly find that part, you're like, oh man, what is it? You know, you look it up and you're like, never heard of it. You're like, okay, so quickly have a Google, have a quick search. And then the really fun thing is, like, so having read it, I mean, the fun of it is, of course, you know, as soon as you've read it, you can then start picking up the text. Like, some people I know pick up the text and start learning it because they've got that kind of brain. Like, I have to read the story to know where the text fits, and then it makes it 10 times easier to learn. So for me, that's kind of how that works. And then getting to know the text, then it's about taking ownership of those words, because, you know, you go in that room, and at the end of the day, you know, I, as the actor, I have to believe that I am that character to a certain degree. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean it in a kind of method kind of way, but it's like, you know, the casting director has brought me in the room because they can see that I might be right for that part. So I'm going to play that with my choices, my twists on it, as Anne, with the truth of Anne. And then in doing that, that's the prep. But essentially, it's like doing all that background is then what allows you to play in the room, I suppose. And for me, in terms of castings and when it comes to being in the room, that's playtime. You know, if you switch audition or interview or whatever, if you take that word away and you kind of say, right, and you change it to, I'm going to have 20 minutes, half an hour of playtime, you know, you're much more relaxed. You can, and that's it. You're an actor. You're there to play.
And Matthew, what would you say your advice for being in the room? And
yeah, I mean, Anne said some brilliant things there that I would echo. I think in terms of for actors, for you, preparation is really important, so that you know the play and you know the part and you have an offer to make. Because as Anne said, a casting director has brought you in the room because we already think you're good, you're brilliant, and you could be right for this part in the way the director envisages it. So, you know, we want you to do the best that you can do. So preparation is really important. I would just say, unless we state, we wouldn't necessarily expect that you should learn it. We want you to be familiar with it so that you can do, as Anne said, you can play with it and be really comfortable and confident that you can do the best you can do. But it's not we're not testing you on learning some lines. And often people that, unless that's the way that you find it really helpful to get into a character, sometimes you find that actually actors that have spent loads of time learning a certain monologue or a certain speech, actually as soon as they get into an audition, there's nerves and stuff, it just sort of prohibits you from doing the best work. So prep is absolutely key. And I think just being able to do everything you can to control how you will do the audition is really important. And because there are so many things that aren't going to be in your control. So as Anne said, if you can come out of the audition room going, gave that my best shot, and I think I did the best I can do, then that's sort of the best you can do. And then it's up to us to try and work out how we put the company together.
And do you do some research around the theatre and the director and the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like dating someone, to the point where, like, I will, yes, definitely researching the theatre, researching the director, the casting director, if it's a musical, the MD, like anyone that has been mentioned in that email that I have received, like that's who I'm researching. And even to the point where, yes, you know, through Googling them, but also like looking on YouTube, like just getting used to the sound of someone's voice. Like that sounds really silly, but it gives me a head start, because now I feel like I know them a bit more, because I've seen an interview that they've done and I might have only watched like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, but from that you get a little taste of their personality. You know if they're a very serious person, you know if actually they're quite up for some humour. Like you can tell a little bit, like just in like 30, 60 seconds, like dating videos, do you know what I mean? So you can do that. Also, I will even look them up on things like Twitter or Facebook, like who have I got connections with, which obviously I'm not going to use in the room and be like, do you know my friend, because that makes me a psycho. But what I will do is know that, oh right, okay, oh they know my friend Lisa and she's lovely, so they must be all right. So again, and that just relaxes me and makes my shoulders go down a bit more. And the other thing is, like, so for example, if you, in terms of researching the directors and of course their work, you get used to you get to see again, like the kinds of work that they do. So for example, so like Sally Cookson, you know, herself, like really physical, like her approach is very much like the body affects the mind. Like, you know, you lead from the body, a lot of physicality. Whereas like Caroline Byrne, for example, is really like, she likes it more like psychological and what's going on here, and that then affects the body. So, and you also over time, you know, and I was saying about auditions that, you know, I know also I haven't got, but it means that I've met other directors, and having met them, I now know, like the second time I meet them, like let's say the first time I meet them and I don't get the job, it still gives me a taste of, like, just via the questions they ask, like what kind of a director they are. So like, yeah, so it then means that then when you meet them on the second time, should you meet them again, i.e. like on a second date, you kind of know how to go in the room, how to approach them, the kind of things that they like to hear. And then you then play the game slightly like that way. And again, it sounds really terrible. It sounds like I'm, like I said, a psycho that's just doing too much research into people. But all of that is just so that then I go in the room and there's no surprises. Like there should be a lack of many surprises, like, because it's like, oh, actually there's quite a few things that I know about you and about what you do, and that's all right. So when you asked me to perform it, like Sally Cookson asked me to do an improv as a beaver, I went, all right. If I hadn't have researched her and been like, oh, okay, that would have come as a massive shock. But I was like, all right, okay, cool, yeah, great, let's go.
I think just to add that, that quite a lot of auditioning for theatre is sometimes the director having a conversation with the actor about how they work, and so it's about trying to form a relationship that's going to last for, you know, 5 weeks of rehearsal, stressful tech, all of that, to get to know the person. So all of that prep that Anna's done on who she's going to meet is really helpful to just feel comfortable to have that conversation.
Yeah, the chat is really important. I'd probably say it's probably the most important part, because I think when you are getting a sense of that, is that something, because Anne, have you ever gone left a project going, because I think it's a two-way thing, isn't it? You're choosing the project as well. Have you ever left a an audition process and gone, oh, I don't want, even if they offered me the job, I don't want to do it?
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. And I guess, you know, as actors, of course, we always want to work. We always want, yeah, we want to work. We want to create art. And then you get into the territory of, well, you know, we need to pay our bills. Like, we want that. But there's sometimes, I mean, instinct and gut is so important. And I guess there comes a point where you're in a room and, you know, yeah, I mean, I've definitely done auditions where I've sat down and, again, I know I've done all my homework, I've done it, I'm ready. And I just feel like the person opposite me I'm like, I don't feel like we're clicking. Like, I just feel, and also I'm also not quite sure about your tone of voice. Like, you might be asking me things and actually you're kind of speaking to me a bit like we're not on a level. And I don't, you know, of course the director is the person in charge of the room. They're the person that leaves the room and the ideas. But, you know, the approach in theory should be that we create the work together. So there shouldn't necessarily, whilst there is a hierarchy, and we kind of know that there is, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I guess it depends on the director and their approach and how they enjoy speaking to people. I mean, they might be the most creative person in the world, but have terrible people skills. And I think, actually, is that how I want to spend the next 4 months of my life? And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. And it's just, I guess I'm saying, having that faith that that job wasn't meant to be, but that's because something else is coming along. And I say having having the feeling, just believing in having enough self-belief to go, do you know what, I'm not sure that the way you're speaking to me is quite, I don't think you're quite going to appreciate my self-worth, so I don't think this is going to work out. I'm walking away, because it is a relationship. It's like any relationship.
Yeah.
I've got how do you get seen? How do you get into the room? So obviously there's lots of casting directors are gatekeepers to the room a little bit. Yeah. How do you get seen? I mean, I wonder about things about your spotlight and your headshots and some advice around that. But if you really want to work for a particular theatre or a particular director or on a project, or how do you hear about projects even as well? Because it can be a little closed, can't it?
Yeah. It's complicated. It's difficult. I think you have to do a lot of research about the kinds of places and that you want to work, and the people that you might want to work with and for, and not everybody advertises their casting, particularly publicly. Some theatres have really great websites that do and put breakdowns out on their website, so they're free to all. The majority of casting breakdowns go out via Spotlight, and so it's really important that you're on that, and that you keep that as up to date as possible, which includes all of your credits and skills and headshots that look like you. Can I
just stop you on that one, because that's a really important thing. It's about having a headshot that looks like you.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be quite strange sometimes when someone walks in the room and you're like, oh, okay, and that might just be about updating it, because we all change and we all get older, and you can see certainly on Spotlight some headshots of people that haven't changed them for a long period of time, and it's really important to keep that up to date, and likewise with credits, it's really important to keep that up to date, because that will be how we look at the kind of people you've worked with, and where you've done that work if we don't know you in person, and likewise with skills, especially on Spotlight, there's lots of different search criteria that we can do. So if we need someone that can play the trombone and sing to a particular key and might be able to juggle, you can search that all out. So you've got to make sure those are accurate and that those are honest for you, because you don't want to come into a room and not be able to do any of those things. So it's really important to keep that up to date. And in terms of sort of finding out about projects, if you can't find anything online, and I suppose I should say the reason perhaps you can't is that if we were to put something out everywhere, we would be inundated with people writing, and unfortunately there are so many actors that it just makes that process even harder for us to try and deal with. And we want to give everyone as equal an opportunity as they can, but that then makes it really difficult to be able to see thousands and thousands of suggestions for one show. But if you do your research, you might think, I'd really like to work at Hornchurch, or I'd really like to work in Derby or anywhere. When they make their season announcements, get in touch then. Work out if they've got a freelance casting director that does lots of their work, or if they've got an internal person that does it, and get in touch with them and say why you might want to do that particular play, or why that part for you is really important to you and you'd like to be seen for it. And by getting in touch, casting directors are starting to learn a little bit about you, and that's exactly what we try and do. And with the quantity of actors that are on Spotlight, we can't know what everyone is doing at every point. So part of your job is to tell us, so that even if we can't necessarily get to a performance, we can get a sense of what you want to do and the work you've done before.
Yeah, I have given parts to people. I've given lead roles to people who have written to me saying, I really want to be seen for this. Yeah. And then obviously say, write about the theatre, why that particular production, and why that, why the theatre as well, why the organisation. And if you got anything do you wait for your agent, or are there things, do you fight for to be seen for particular projects?
Yeah, of late it's kind of it's been through my agent, but actually what I've tended to find that's happened over the last few years is, if I have in terms of rehearsed readings, it's like a huge thing, because that's an audition without saying the word audition, And I think sometimes people can be a bit like, a rehearsed reading, what? No, because I want to do it on stage, and you're like, okay, that's, we all do. But actually, what's really nice is, like, in a rehearsed reading, you're having an audition for, and again, you might be offered a part in a rehearsed reading that you think, there's no way in a million years I'd play that part. Why am I playing 85-year-old Nora? I don't know, no offense, it's my grandma's name. Like, why am I playing that part? And you go, all right, whatever, I'll go along with it. But you do that, but again, it's because you don't know who's in the room. Like, who's the person that wrote it? Who's the director? Who's the person, is the casting director there? So you go along, do as best a job as you can. And again, it's just a way of getting to know other people. And again, the idea is that then you do them, and then they're like, oh, actually, do you know what? That woman, she wasn't necessarily right for that part, but actually 6 months down the line, there's this project that I'm doing, and we've been struggling to try and find whoever, and actually she might be pretty good, so we'll get her in the room. So things like the rehearsed readings, and you can see those on things like Twitter, and people are like, oh, we're really looking for, so if you search things, you can find a lot on there. And as Matthew said, in terms of when theatres release their seasons, so they're like, oh, this is what we're doing, and this is the 6-month plan. They probably have maybe started auditioning, certainly for the first one and second one, but 3, 4, 5 and 6 down the road, there's no way they haven't done that. So it's like, okay, well, why don't you then contact that director, or contact, as you say, someone, like Matthew said, someone that you think that might be attached to it. I don't know, Tina at the box office, does she know who's casting it? Don't know, give her a ring, and if she doesn't, she'll find out. So contact anyone that you think might know, and then it's just a way of getting in. But certainly, I think sometimes, and even I've done it, but this thing of feeling like you have to go straight to the top, you have to try and get in there, and you're like, do you know what, actually, from little seeds great things grow. So it's do those rehearsed readings, or get to know those writers. And I think that's a really good way of finding out about projects, and also actually like in the future.
And don't be frightened to get in touch with people. I think that's really important. That's part of your job, to get in touch with people and to get in touch with casting directors and get in touch with directors and theatres. That's really important. So you shouldn't be frightened or think, oh, I'm going to bother this person. You should absolutely be writing to us regularly.
Is that which format? Is that a letter? Is that email?
I would say email. I would say email. It's what it saves you the postage first and foremost, but it's email. You can just drop us an email, and I mean, I think be concise, and I think you might not necessarily get a response, but that doesn't mean it has been ignored or it hasn't been read or considered. And I know that's really difficult to sometimes to bear, because then you think, oh well, not heard for a few days, shall I write again? And then shall I write again? That's when you start to think, well, there's lots of people writing all the time, but absolutely do get in touch.
Right, I'm going to open up to questions. Obviously it's very popular here, so I've got two screens, so I'm going to have to whiz between the two screens. So anyone got a question? Do you want to raise your hand? Ollie?
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there's two of us.
Ollie Harrington.
Thank you.
Oh, no, Sorry.
Yeah, so this is for both of you, really. But have you got any advice for sort of if you're starting out as a small company, that sort of really sort of, say you've got your first batch of funding, your first lot of really professional project, of casting a wide net, particularly across age ranges, because often sort of if you're starting out, lots of the actors are sort of a similar age to you, sort of in your early 20s, and you might want to sort of expand beyond that with your piece. Are there particularly good ways of sort of expanding out when you don't have a ton of resources to sort of to do that, basically?
Well, I guess in terms of trying to get to meet new people and new actors, it's about maybe watching different things, and is that sort of what you mean in terms of?
I think more for sort of for getting the attention of actors. So say you've got a piece that you want to do, and but you say you're starting out, so you haven't quite yet built up a massive sort of bank of people, or the people are sort of are all sort of doing the same sort of things as you are anyway. What's a good way to sort of if you're trying to get the attention of actors for people to submit to auditions and that sort of stuff? Are there any particular good tips for from an actor POV to sort of get your attention and be like, oh, that might be something interesting to have a bet on this young company, or something sort of, Matt, from your sort of point of view, of a way of of reaching more people than you might if you sort of just sort of were going off quite a sort of a limited sort of young reputation?
I see. Well, I think using Spotlight would be my first port of call. I think because it's the kind of professional standard for how we cast productions. If you can send out a breakdown via Spotlight, you instantly will look professional, and it will cast the wide net, the net really wide. I think also use things like this. I mean, there's a community of people here with a vast array of different experiences that you can tap into. And I think there are other communities and theatres that do very similar things. And this is absolutely a brilliant resource to meet like-minded people with a variety of experiences.
You can definitely send stuff to Lauren. Here, give us away if you need casting from this, from if you want to use this network. Also, maybe where are people looking for jobs apart from Spotlight? what other places are our team here? Where are you looking for jobs? Where are they posted?
I look at on arts jobs every day.
Arts jobs.
Yeah, arts jobs is good.
Anywhere else? Are there posts out on Mandy? Does that happen? Yeah, Mandy. The posts out on Mandy, so you can reach quite a wide range.
Casting Call Pro.
Casting Call Pro. Yeah.
And sometimes The Stage.
The Stage do, yeah.
The Stage, yeah.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Facebook at the moment's really good as well. The theatre industry COVID group. If no one's joined it yet, that's brilliant for rehearsed readings and
great
stuff to do online as well. That's great.
Yeah, great. Gemma, you've got a question, haven't you?
I do. Yeah, Matthew. It's going back to what you said about getting in touch with casting directors. I was always kind of told at drama school that unsolicited emails are always a bit taboo. So could you just clear up what is good to include in the email if you are going to approach or do a kind of mail out to casting directors?
Yeah, sure. So top tips I would say are know who you're writing to, and make sure you write to that person and include their name and the organisation they work for. I think you want to have a reason for writing. So as we discussed earlier, it might be that you're really passionate about this particular play or project or director that you want to work with right then. If you're in something, whether that's TV, theatre, film, you've got something on the radio, you've got a podcast, any of those sorts of things that are just about to come out or coming out in the future, put that in, tell us what you're doing. If you've got a link to your Spotlight CV, send that. You don't need to worry about attaching headshots or attaching other CVs. I would use that as you can, and obviously then on Spotlight you can put as many headshots as you like. And then also if you've got a show reel or a self-tape, a link to that. And then just request to be kept in mind, effectively. And then if I were to reply, I might say thank you. I might say get in touch when there's something I can see you're in performance in. If you haven't got something I can see, so yeah, those would be my top tips.
Liv, you had a question, didn't you?
My question is about what's the latest thoughts, feelings, ideas about women playing traditionally male roles and men playing traditionally female roles? I know it's been used for sort of, as a selling point, Glenda Jackson's King Lear or whatever, but and I know that it's more likely to happen in kind of Shakespeare. What about in Chekhov or contemporary plays? And what if I wrote to somebody and say I'd like to be Paris in Romeo and Juliet, or I'd like to be Alan Dangle in One Man, Two Governors? What do you guys think about that?
I'd do it, definitely. It's changing so fast, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if that is something you're passionate about, that's another thing to say. Right, so have you considered I might be the perfect Alan Dangle? And it might just be a different way of thinking about it. I mean, it's obviously, I think what we're seeing is that it's very common in classical plays generally, but there's no reason why you can't do it with more contemporary work, and it is changing for the better. And I think it's often about how a director might envisage the world of the play that they're creating, and if they've got something important that they want to say, that's where the conversation sometimes starts from. But I think it's a really healthy, brilliant thing.
Yeah, I agree. You can. I think, that's a really brilliant question. Thanks, Liv. Ollie Yellop, you had a question.
Hiya. I was just thinking about show reels. In terms of how important do you feel show reels are when casting for theatre? And do you particularly look for credits in TV credits rather than short film or student film credits?
Not necessarily looking for sort of specific TV credits or short film credits. I think any work that you do, we would look at. I think showreel wise, I think obviously you have, in some ways, it feels like you have to have been on television to be able to create a showreel. Obviously, I think once you've done a body of work, perhaps on television, it's important that the show reel doesn't need to be really long. It doesn't need to be cut really fast and look really exciting. If you've got one scene that you filmed for a TV program and you're really happy with it, that's all you need, really. It's about your work, and so it's important that it just shows you. If you don't have the TV credits yet, then you can film yourself. You can do a monologue or something like that. I think for theatre, it gives us a sense of somebody. It gives us a little hint at what they might be like, what kind of parts they've played on television. But we wouldn't cast somebody off a show reel. I think it would be giving us a flavour of them, which we might see something in for a theatre production.
Another question? I'm just looking over the 2 pages and making sure I don't miss anyone. And Janine?
Hi, yeah, it was going to be one each if I quickly can. And I was going to ask you, like, any advice on how to keep in touch with casting directors. I know Matthew said a lot from a casting director's point of view, as in, you know, do this, do that, do the other, which is absolutely perfect coming from a casting director. But yourself, are you obviously not nervous about contacting casting directors, saying, oh, I'm in this, I'm doing this, I've had new photos done, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I don't, a bit like Matthew said, you know, he doesn't feel embarrassed about it. I mean, I don't feel embarrassed about sending them. At the end of the day, I used to, at the beginning when I first started, I hated it because I felt a bit like I was sucking up and I was selling my soul to the devil.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And now I'm like, do you know what? This is all part of the game. Okay. And the thing is, you know, I'm going to send you an email, but that's all right. And you know that I won't be expecting a reply, and that's okay. You know that I'm going to send another one in 6 months' time, and I'll still invite you. And I know that you won't reply. But at some point, 3 months down the road, we may meet in a bar, and I will talk to you like I know you, because I know that I have written to you 3 times, and I won't talk to you like I'm your best friend, because I'm terrible at networking. I'm terrible at the face-to-face chat. Oh, it's like awful. But and I tend to rant, as you can see. Anyway, so I don't feel bad anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore, because now I realise actually if I want to get somewhere and if I want to work at that place and I want to work with that director, then I have to. And also they're not going to feel bad if I do.
No, great, thanks. Doug, I'm allowed just one quickly to Matthew, please. Obviously, Matthew, you said like the casting process is who might be good at this particular part, or directors that have worked with actors that they'd like to work with again. Obviously, you know, we've spoke about that, and that is a bit of a bitch if you haven't worked for the RSC or something, you know, the director's never worked with me, etc., etc. But like, I've worked for the Mill a few times, which is lovely, you know, so I go back there, as in not the Watermill, the Mill at Sonning, which is nice for me as an actor. But obviously for the RSC or something like that, you know, if let's say, if, like Liv said about the changing characters, like I'd love to play Tybalt or something in Romeo and Juliet. I think that would be wicked, you know, or the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. Would you seek me out through Spotlight by going, I mean, obviously you don't know my name or anything, obviously I'm a Geordie, but if you had something in your particular Spotlight breakdown, would you literally just send it out to the agent saying, look, we've got the role of Tybalt, we might want this sort of person, that sort of person, so submit all your details there? Because you're not going to go on Spotlight and just type in something to bring me up, I'm sure, because
actually that is exactly what we do.
Is it? So you would just say like Geordie or Northern? Yeah,
so for example, I mean, Anne can talk about this as well, for The Winter's Tale that Erica Wyman is directing, which Anne is in, which we hope to open later in the year. Part of the search was actually looking for Northeastern heritage actors, actually.
What?
Which I now feel very bad about saying, because we didn't meet you. But so actually in that instance, I was searching exactly using those techniques and finding as many actors as I could. Now, obviously, I missed you and I've missed a trick. I appreciate that. But so that's absolutely what we do. It's absolutely what we do. And it's also therefore about, now I've obviously met you now, and we've got a link here, and that's part of the process.
Good.
It's part of the process, yeah.
Absolutely
Big
part of the
tick.
process. And that's what I was
you.
said earlier about Spotlight, and why it's really important to keep your details up to date, and because that's exactly what we do, because directors come to us with visions for their plays, and so in this instance there was an idea for a northeastern setting for a part of the play, but somebody might want someone who's got really strong physical skills, or they might want to set part of their play in a particular world, or we're looking for a specific accent, etc., etc. And so part of my job is to go through Spotlight and to find out all the actors that are Geordies, or all the actors that are that can play the trombone, as I used that earlier, and then start selecting. Unfortunately, we can't meet everybody because time doesn't allow. So I think for the company size for Winter's Tale and Comedy of Errors is 27 actors, I think. And we saw about 160 over the process, maybe 200 up to that. So obviously that's not very many in
Comparison.
In comparison to how many actors there are. And that's the really galling thing. We'd like to be able to see as many of you as possible, but it's just time does not allow it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Probably got time for one. Let's go. Hand up again. Was that Fenella? Have you got your hand up? Yeah.
Hi. This is a question for Anne. Thank you so much. You've said some really inspiring things, actually, which has been really nice to listen to. I was just going to ask a question about when you go into the room, an audition room, because sometimes I feel like I've done the prep and I feel really confident about it, and then as soon as I see their faces, what you said about watching interviews and stuff, that's so helpful, because I think I've done that before, and it's like, I know you, but you don't really know them. But how do you kind of combat that feeling when you first go in? Because sometimes you can get such a rush and it's hard to control yourself, even if you've done the prep and stuff. Like, do you have any tips for coping with that?
It sounds really rubbish to say breathe, but unless at the end of the day you're giving up, like, from a practical perspective, you are giving up your time and your money to be there, right? So at the end of the day, you might as well enjoy it. So it's like, okay, having sat down, done your thing, you've done your homework, before you can feel like, use that energy and all of that for the chat and the how are you and the this and the that. But when it comes down to the serious stuff, when it comes down to the acting, like, you take that breath and do not talk until you are ready. And if that means you have to wait 5 seconds, or you got to wait 30 seconds, then they will have to wait, because you want to show off what you have done, because you have taken that time, you spent that money getting there, you paid for that coffee in Starbucks, and now you are going to show them what you can do. So that was what I was taught, and I think that's one of the best bits of advice I was ever given, was do not talk until you are ready.
It's really great advice.
Yeah.
One last question, Odeke.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Doug. It's just a quick question, please. You might have actually answered it. I have a script where I have 8 characters, but 3 of them are from a BA, ME and backgrounds, and I'm finding it very difficult to cast it. So other than Spotlight, are there any other places that I can actually look for where it's very specific in terms of the roles and backgrounds?
I mean, I would suggest that is your best database. I mean, again, as said earlier, I mean, you can use social media to put call outs for very specific things. But I don't think there's anything more specific than that, really.
Okay.
There's a great company called Intermission, which are based in London. That might be helpful.
Okay.
It's also like certain theatre companies, go for like certain theatre companies as well that are more BAME, that are aimed at BAME actors. Like, it might be that actually you contact them, and I think it's a bit of a ripple effect in our industry. Like, you ask one person and they might not be the right person, but they will know someone who knows. So they then contact blah blah, and they don't know, it's not them, so they find out. But I think that's the most amazing thing about our industry, is that, you know, people are willing to help. You know, we're witnessing that now, and you know, that's one of the most incredible things about the arts. And I think it's a ripple effect. Like, you might just putting something out there, someone will know someone will be willing to help. And I think, but it does take time, and that's the other thing. It's not instant necessarily, but it will give it a couple of days. And if it's worth it, and if those people are right, you know, you'll need a couple of days to find them, but then you'll have them.
Yeah.
David's just put some. David's put some contacts, some good companies in the chat. Also, Odeke, we could very sneakily, and this is something which, Lauren, we haven't thought about offering the network before, but we could give you the password for a couple of days of Spotlight, because Spotlight, you have to pay for it.
Oh, thank you. Because Lauren and Doug.
So we could, and I think we can offer that to anyone, actually, can't we? We just it doesn't mean we'd have to change the password all the time, but if you want, we can give you the password for a couple of days, because obviously it's really expensive.
And if there's particular parts you're struggling with or looking for, another possibility is if you start sort of googling plays that might be quite similar or have similar types of actor required, that might just lead you on a route that might just uncover something else or something extra.
No, will do. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you.
That's right, you're welcome. So I probably have to round up there. I'd really love, we always kind of do this at the end of the session, but I'd love some, what people have, it's always useful for me to know what has been new for you, or what you found useful from the session. So what your takeaways from the session are. Obviously, Fenella, we heard this lovely stuff you found from Anne, you found inspiring. Is there anyone who would just like to say what their takeaway is? Brooke.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, it's really refreshing to hear. Like, obviously you spend a lot of time emailing casting directors or directors and really sort of getting a response, and it does sort of slowly whittle you down, and you like there's longer periods of time that you leave it until you try again. So now I just wanted to say thanks from both of you, to say, like, everyone really, just to say, yeah, it's just nice to hear that it doesn't go like unnoticed, or it's not, you know, yeah, it's just, you just need to remember it and keep.
Yeah, great. Ed, you had a takeaway?
Yeah, I think it's a really important reminder for all the actors who are listening to this, that, you know, if you've got into the room, then that really means something. You are talented. If you don't get the role, it doesn't mean you're not talented, because you wouldn't have got in the room in the first place. I've been on both sides. I've had to cast things for my own projects, and I think it's been reiterated tonight, and it's really wonderful. And I have to remember it as well, you know, because you don't always get those auditions, and you do prepare really hard, and you do really good work. But as long as you do your best, that will be remembered. And you might not be right for that role, but you'll be right for something else.
Great. Anyone else? Any takeaways? Hattie?
Hiya. Yeah, I think for me it was a nice reminder to not be embarrassed to write just because you love a play or love a director or really love a part, and to let yourself be known. Like, a really good reminder, especially when you feel like you've not done much in 10 weeks because you've just been at home. It's nice to be like, when it all comes up again, you can get stuck in again too.
And that's the reason we all do it, is because we're really passionate about plays. And it's really lovely to get a note from someone that's really passionate about a play that you're also passionate about or working on, and you go, yes, this is what we need, you know.
Yeah, you feel like sometimes you need permission, like you need your agent to do it for you, or you need like a big reason, but actually if it's just because you really love a play, you're like, hey, it's me.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm just going to round up a couple of things. So next week we have a really brilliant sound design called Designed Web 2, Helen Atkinson, who has, I've worked with a fair bit. She's worked designed for Complicité quite a lot. She's done stuff at the National, and then Lee Davis, who's done loads, who's local, is Essex. he worked on As You Like It, Ebony's here. He was the sound designer on the NT Public Act project that we did last year, and a number of other projects. He's associate on Matilda. So it's quite sound based. I would do cut. You don't have to be a designer, you know, you don't have to be a technician or designer. It's just sound is such a vital part of performance. And there'll be tips, you know, if you want to be a designer, but also tips for directors or for writers, how you can write sound into the work. Also, just as actors, if you're making your own work, we're making digital work. So just really, it's exploring the role of sound within all of that. They're both really, really brilliant, and we're just great company as well, really cracking company. So that will be next week. Do have a think about what the future of this kind of network is actually as well, because there will come a time in a couple of weeks, I think we'll discuss that. The other thing is that we've put out this survey, this questionnaire, 5-6 questions to the community about their experiences under lockdown, and we're going to make something here at the Queen's. It felt really, really important. I felt very impotent, and I felt that I really we're looking at these big stories all the time on the news, and I was very aware we're not talking to our community, and we all know, because we're all having these conversations, of all these things that are happening to us during lockdown, the reflection, the difficulties, the positive things, and they can be really, really, I'm really interested in the detail, like tiny things. Like one member of our staff said that she suddenly realized that stilettos aren't important. And that is such a beautiful, Hattie's not going for that, but it was such a beautiful little insight into her. And it says so much about her and where she's at, and, you know, even those tiny little things. I'd love you, if you could fill in the survey, that'd be really great. But equally, I'm trying to get it to, and also you can phone the box office and just chat to the box office. They are calling people, the box office, because our box office is so brilliant. They're just the warmest human beings in the world. And they are also, if anyone calls, they're also asking them questions. So you could just, if you want to chat with our box office team, you can just give them a call and they'll ask you these questions. But I'd really, if you can, it's on the, Lauren, could you just put it in the chat, the link? Lauren, could you just put it in the chat? If you could, I want it to reach as far as possible, and to people who probably wouldn't come into contact with our social media or our comms team. I just want it to really reflect our community, that it's a real reflection. So if you know anyone who probably would never answer a survey or see that we're asking for one, would you pass it on so that we can collect this data? And what we're going to do is we're going to make a piece. It's a kind of love letter from the theatre to its community, and we're going to reflect back their stories, because it feels really important that we're capturing this moment, because it is obviously a moment that is going to change. Oh, David's put it in there. So there it is. It's SurveyMonkey there, or you can go onto the Queen's Theatre website and scroll down, and there's a news story there as well, so you can connect, or look at our social media. It's all over our social media. If you could get it to one person who you think we should know about their experience, that would be really wonderful. Thank you. It's been such a gorgeous session. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Anne. Thank everyone else for coming. I think we could have gone on for quite a long time. And Matthew very kindly had said just before the session is that when we can come together, that Matthew is up for doing a IRL session at the Queen's at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wouldn't that be great to look forward to, so we could all come together and have a nice little treat afterwards or something. Great. Thanks very much. You've been brilliant. Thank you. It's so lovely. These evenings are really special to me. So thank you very, very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Me too.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.